Estonia, 1992. The film begins with a young girl named Zora running away from the Russian mafia and hiding on the site of an old private house. Hiding from her pursuers, the powerless girl falls to the ground and loses consciousness. Elderly Aliade is hunting a fly and accidentally looks out the window when she sees a girl lying in the middle of the yard. Considering that this is the bait of thieves, she ignores the stranger and calmly drinks tea. Sometime later, the woman sees that the girl is still lying and decides to check if everything is fine with her. Taking an axe in hand, Aliade goes to Zara and sees that she is in a terrible state. 6 months before these events, Zara and other young girls were kidnapped by Russian mafiosi and was forced to go to a foreign country in the trunk of a car. From the first minutes of her stay in a nightclub with naked dancers, Zara became a victim of an evil owner. He promised to give freedom after the girl worked off the debt, because he had to pay for the road, accommodation, and food. Soon Zara first entered the track to work as a girl of night butterfly. The clients ignored the girl, which made Pasha even more angry and beat the ward. Later, he returned her to a nightclub so that the girl would satisfy the establishment's wealthy clients. Being a slave, Zara did not lose hope that she could return home and meet her mother and grandmother again. Now Zara is in the house of the elderly Alida, who does not trust the stranger much. Despite this, the woman fed the girl and asked to tell about who she was and where she came from. Zara talks about how her mother experienced terrible events in her childhood, which is why she hardly speaks. Upon learning that Zara's mother's name is Linda and her grandmother's name is Engel, Aliade was very surprised and realized that this girl was the granddaughter of her own sister. Here, the old woman was flooded with memories associated with her youth. Post-war Estonia occupied by the Soviet Union. Young Aliade and Engel are sitting in the cemetery, talking about their future. Aliade is a very naive girl, so she eats a flower and believes that it will make any wish she makes come true. Seeing a handsome man nearby, Aliade does not notice the armature and injures his leg. This does not bother the girl, because she has one desire for this man to look at her. Alas, Alida's dreams were not destined to come true, as Hans fell in love with her sister Engel. Sometime later, he nevertheless approached the girl, but only in order to invite his wife's sister to dance. Aliade is sincerely jealous of Engel and enjoys every second spent in the arms of Hans. She later sees the newlyweds kissing and runs away from the wedding. In the evening, the girl overhears her sister and her husband making love and imagines herself in Engel's place. That same night, Russian soldiers came to their house to take away the father and mother of the girls. In the morning, a policeman who arrived at their house said that their parents had been declared enemies of the people and would be deported to Siberia. Angel is outraged by the injustice of the Soviet government, but immediately gets punched in the face for impudent behavior. Before leaving, the policeman says that now all their lands belong to the state. In the evening, Aliade offers her sister to run away to Finland, but Engel refuses as she is in a position and cannot leave Hans. A few months later, the couple gives birth to a baby girl, whom they name Linda. In the present tense, Zara accidentally finds the same photo of two sisters with Aliade and realizes that this old woman is her relative. Aliade denies this and says that she has sisters because she was a traitor to her homeland who stole grain from the field. Zara understands that these fields used to belong to them, and this is not theft, but an attempt to eat, but Aliade does not agree and considers herself a proper communist. A little later, Zara goes to bed and asks her not to turn off the light, as she is afraid of the dark and wants to know where she is when she wakes up. As soon as the girl falls asleep, she has a nightmare about her recent past. Zara and her friend were bullied and given to clients who had no limits of decency. When the girl tried to disobey, Pasha forced her to undress and took several photos, promising to send them to all Zara's relatives to disgrace her. After that, the mafia and the owner of the nightclub used the girl dirty, showing her his superiority. Waking up, Zara opens the door locked by the old woman from the inside and goes out into the street. Meanwhile, Aleid fell asleep and sees the events of the distant past. Hans says goodbye to his wife and her sister in order to go to the rebel detachment and drive the Russian occupiers out of their land. Sometime later, he returns and reports that not everything he planned was successful. Aleid does not want the man to be sent to Siberia and asks to stop the resistance by submitting to the Soviet regime. The next morning, Estonian-flagged rebels arrive at the girl's house. They ask to call Hans in order to go to the town hall and stage a coup, overthrowing the power set by the Soviet Union. Aleid and Ingo lie, reporting that Hans is not at home. When the men leave, Aleid wishes them to lose and fall into eternal sleep. Soon the rebels fail their mission and become victims of Stalin's repressions. They are executed on the spot without trial or investigation, after which the bodies of men are burned. A little later, a policeman arrives at the girl's house to find out where Hans is. Realizing that he is recognized as an enemy of the people, Aleid reports that he was deprived of his life 2 years ago when he left his home. From that day on, Hans goes underground in the truest sense of the word and begins to live under the base of the house in a hidden niche. In the evening, the policeman, who did not believe the words of the girls, arrests them and takes them to the town hall for interrogation. After an additional conversation, they are allowed to go home. At night, Engel makes love to her husband in the shed, while Aleid watches them and caresses herself. At one point, she almost exposes herself due to moans, but manages to hide in time. Having escaped into the forest, the girl takes out her anger on the trees and bushes, as she still wants to be in her sister's place. Dropping the axe, old Aleid wakes up and sees that Zara has left home. Seeing how her sister's granddaughter is trying to wash herself in the bathroom, she recalls the torment that she had to endure. The policeman again did not believe the words and, having caught Aleid, arrested her. Russian soldiers beat and tortured the girl, took turns by force and continued various abuses, demanding a frank confession. Aleid loves Hans too much, so she withstood all the bullying without saying a word. Sometime later, she was thrown onto the road and, returning home, Aleid was washed in the same way as now Zara, who cut her pink hair. The old woman feels compassion for the girl and treats her to tea. At some point, the conversation is interrupted due to the fact that a car has arrived at the house. Zara realizes that this is the Russian mafia and asks to hide it. Aleid helps the girl to hide in a niche and takes out a gun to feel safe. Having met with Pasha and his assistant, the old woman denies the presence of uninvited guests and asks them to leave. The man introduced himself as a policeman, but this does not work on Alida because she does not trust anyone and she has nothing to hide, since she has never seen Zara. Once again immersed in the past, Aleid remembers how she met her future husband Martin. He was a communist preaching Stalinism and Leninism. Having shown sympathy for the man, she made love to him at the first meeting. Returning home, the girl hardly washed off his smell, but realized that this was the only way to protect herself and her sister. She decided to cooperate with the invaders and help them in everything, working as an inspector and writing out people's debts. Ingo warned her sister that she would be hated, but she did not listen. Soon it all happened because no one was happy to see Aleid on the threshold of his house. Someone closed the door in front of her nose. Others could kick the girl or spit in her face. At the same time, she realized that this was the only way to protect herself, because every day the Russians took the lives of hundreds of Estonians and considered enemies of the people. Sometime later, Ingo told her sister that she locked her husband under the basement of the house and did not let him out, because he heard that Aleid stinks of Russians and he would like to take her life. A little later, the policeman met with Aleid and invited her to his place. Martin is on a business trip, so he can talk to her calmly and inform her that Engel and Linda have been arrested. They are traitors, so Alade refuses her sister and niece. Then the policeman takes her to a room with the prisoners and demands that she personally punishes them. Submitting to the Soviet aggressor, the woman threw a red-hot lamp-year-old girl, forcing her to experience all the horror of the Stalinist regime. Alade realized that she no longer wanted to see her relatives and decided to get rid of them. For this, the girl wrote a denunciation to Engel and Linda, accusing them of betrayal. Soon they were deported to Siberia, and Alade and Martin occupied her sister's house. A little later, Alade released her sister's husband and told that Engel was very far away. She promised Hans that she would take care of his documents, and he would be able to leave for them, but first he needs to wait. The man would like to take his own life, but suffers because he misses his wife and daughter. At the same time, Zara, sitting in a locked trap, remembers what happened to her a couple of days before. Pasha decided to sell her to an impudent and terrible client, capable of doing whatever he wanted with the girl. Left alone with the vile Andrei, Zara attacked him and took his life. After stealing the keys to a client's car, she drove off and abandoned the vehicle so she wouldn't be tracked down. That is how she got to where she is now. Alade remembers the time when Martin leaves for work, and she used it to spend time with Hans. Trying to bewitch her sister's husband, the girl mixed blood into the soup, but this had no effect on him. Time passed and winter came. Alade understood that it was becoming increasingly difficult to keep Hans, so she made false passports for him and herself, promising to organize an escape in the near future. After seeing off her husband on a business trip, Alade packed her things and hoped that she was about to run away with Hans to Finland. Alida's plans were not destined to come true, as the man escaped in advance and had already returned with a bullet wound to the chest. The girl tries to help Hans and finds his diary in her pocket. There, the man admitted that he still loved Engel and had no intention of running away with Alade. She is disgusting to him because she was engaged in opportunism, contacted vile Russians, and stinks of them. The man had long wanted to put a bullet in her head, but restrained himself in order to see his wife and daughter. Realizing that Hans will never love her, Alade takes his life, after which he kisses him for the first and last time, and then buries him in a hiding place under the foundation of the house. In the present tense, Pasha again came to the old woman's house, as in the morning he noticed that she was alone, and there were 2 cups for tea. Zara sees the car and runs out of the house to escape in case the old lady can't protect her. During the conversation, Pasha realizes that Alade has gone crazy because of painful memories, and does not understand who is in front of her. He threatens the old woman, but she decides to undergo purification and atone for her sins. Saving an unfortunate relative, Alade takes the life of Pasha and his assistant. After that, the woman finds Zora's passport and a pack of dollar bills in the mafioso's pocket. After writing a farewell letter of apology to Engel and Linda, the old woman gives it, documents and money to her sister's granddaughter. The girl leaves to go to Finland, and Alade decides to cover his tracks. To do this, the woman douses the house with gasoline and sets it on fire, remaining inside. Together with herself, she destroys the housing, the bodies of Pasha and his comrade that were in it, as well as the skeleton of the buried Hans.